Alright, here we are back in the shop again. What we're going to do now on this coral strat build is I've got my neck here and I just wiped it down with some naphtha. What we're going to do is we're going to stain or dye this fingerboard a darker brown. It is a rosewood fingerboard. It's a all parts neck made in the USA. So there are a couple of gotchas with it. First and foremost, you want to be careful when you're doing this edge here that you don't get it on the maple, because this dye that we're going to be using, it will wick into the maple, and the only way to get it out will be to sand it out, and you don't want to have to reshape your neck. The other thing is, well, the same thing but in a different location. You want to be careful up here on the headstock that you don't, we're going to lightly hit right up here just on the front side of the nut as the rosewood scoops down to the head, as the rosewood scoops down to the headstock. So I'm going to get a few things out here and I will be right back and we'll get started. Okay, so we're about to get started on this fingerboard here. Like I said, on the neck itself, there's a couple of areas to be careful on either edge that you don't want to get the dye into the nice maple. On the back of the neck, you don't want it to drip down. This stuff is very, very thin. You want to keep it off of the white maple as much as possible, and then up here on the headstock. So the dye we're going to be using is an Angelus leather dye. I've used this on many guitars, not this particular color, but Angelus, this manufactured dye. It does excellent. In the box you get the bottle of dye, which is 3 ounces, and you get 2 applicators. Do not use these applicators to put the dye on your fingerboard. These things, as soon as you touch it, they'll wick up like 1.5 gallons, and as soon as you put it down, it'll squeeze out everywhere. So best thing to do is, once you get your dye out of the box, you want to take these and put them back in the box, because we're not going to be using those. We're going to be using a cotton ball or several cotton balls. Also, you can buy these cheap 5mm gloves at Harbor Freight. They're really not cheap. They're like $9 or $10 a box. I have found that these gloves, when you're using any type of dye or stain, you may as well not even waste a pair of these gloves, because the dye or stain is going to go right through these gloves. What I use when I'm dyeing or staining are the Venom Steel. These gloves are much more expensive than the cheap ones, but I'll show you here. On the inside, they're actually lined. They're also chemical resistant. 2-layer. You got the black outer layer and then the inner white layer. They are chemical resistant, not chemical proof. So be mindful of that. The dye sometimes will go through these if you're like just slopping it on something. I don't know if you guys kept up with that Les Paul that I did the denim, the faded denim finish. It was a retop, and on that particular thing, I mean, I loaded it up with purple, blue, purple, cobalt blue, light blue, black dye, and I mean, I had to just soak it to get into the flame maple to get the stripes to highlight. I actually wore 2 pair of these while I was doing that, because the first pair I had on, the purple and blue, started to go through the glove. We're not going to be laying it on near as thick on this fingerboard as I was doing on that guitar. So 1 pair should suffice. So what we're going to do is this thing, basically the directions are straightforward. Clean leather with Angelus leather prepare. We're not doing that, so in lieu of that step, I cleaned the fingerboard with some good old trusty dusty naphtha. That will get any contaminant or anything off, and I went 3 passes, and you can kind of see the rosewood kind of came out on the cotton ball that I used for that. So before you even think about opening the die, go ahead and get your gloves on, because like I say, this stuff is the consistency of this stuff is thin. So you want to be careful, because it may end up splashing out a little bit, so you do not want to wear good clothes when you're doing this. So we're going to shake it. And we're going to open it here. Actually, and as you can see, there is no protective plastic that you have to punch through. The last couple of Angelus dies I got actually had a plastic film, so I'm actually surprised and somewhat relieved that this one does not have that. So I'm going to show you how we're going to do this. This stuff is highly concentrated. So I'm not even going to use the bottle. I'm going to use the cap, like what little bit is in the cap. And I'm just going to take my cotton ball, and I'm just going to grab it like that and just kind of work it in down here. And we're just going to grab just a little bit. And just kind of work it. You don't want to have so much on your cotton ball that it drips down the side and gets on your maple. So we're just going to kind of go just back and forth like that. You can already kind of see the difference there. I'm only doing 1 fret at a time. I'm not trying to do the whole fingerboard all at once. Another thing that this will do is it will also darken up your position markers. It will make them look more like clay. I mean, I am just a little bit of that brown. So we're going to set this right there. We're going to take a look at it and see. Yeah, that's looking pretty good. So we're going to let this set for just a little bit. And what I'm going to try to do now is I'm going to take this glove off because I don't want to get anything on this headstock. And I'm going to take the same cotton ball. I'm not going to re-dip it in anything new there. I'm just going to kind of hit this area up here and just kind of go right up to and touching that maple. And then you guys can see how I just kind of went right up to and touching where the rosewood hits the maple. I'm going to do the same thing with the side here. I'm going to hold my cotton ball at an angle, so I'm not going to put it flat. I'm going to hold it. So here's the cotton ball. Instead of holding it flat and rubbing, I'm going to hold it at an angle and rub, but I'm going to angle away from the actual maple itself. So I'm just going to lay it flat and just kind of angle the cotton ball away from the maple. Okay, I'll flip it over. Same thing. All right. So what we're going to do now is we're going to let this sit It dries pretty quick, relatively quick. Uh, like right now, it's not even coming off on my finger. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to let this thing sit. And I'm going to keep my glove on because these things are expensive. We're going to let this thing set up for maybe 10 or 15 minutes. And then we're going to hit it with some naphtha and just see what comes off. Be careful. Another thing I forgot to mention is be careful. You want to keep your nut slot here. If you don't already have a nut in there, you want to keep that as clean as possible. You don't want to get any contaminants in there. You don't want to get any dye or stain or any type of oil or anything, because some people glue their nut in, some people don't. But if you put like one little drop of like real thin super glue in there, once you get your nut the way it's supposed to be cut and the slots are good and everything, there's nothing wrong with gluing it in. It kind of makes it a pain in the ass later for whoever has to take it out to replace it if you need a nut replacement. But nobody's going to call the FBI. They're not going to serve a no-knock warrant because you super glued your nut in or put a little bit of a tight bond or whatever in there. But even if you don't intend on gluing your nut in, keep your nut, it's a general rule, just keep that tucked in the back of your mind anytime you work on a new neck or you're doing a nut replacement or whatever. Same thing if you're taking an old nut out and putting a new one in, clean that nut slot out. You want it as pristine as you can possibly get it. So this one is from the factory. I've already cleaned it out with a Q-tip and some naphtha to get any dust or debris or anything that was in there. So I can already tell that this neck has darkened up probably at least 2 shades. So we're gonna take a little break here. I'm gonna keep this glove on, like I said, because they're kind of expensive, and then we're gonna come back in about we'll let it set up for another 5 or 10 minutes, and we're going to come back and hit it with some naphtha, and we'll see if nothing comes off with the naphtha. Then we'll let the naphtha dry, and then we'll take a look at it and see. We might want to go a little bit darker. Alright, so we've let this thing set up for about 10 minutes, so next we're going to hit it with some naphtha. So we're going to start with a fresh cotton ball, put some naphtha on it. We're going to start up here. We're just going to hit that like that. And as you can see, it's pulling a little bit off, but a vast majority of it is staying on the fingerboard. So you also want to clean the top of your frets off because you got dye on them. Naphtha is good for taking that off. So I like that it stayed in the dots. So let me turn this light on here. I don't know if that'll help, but it actually stayed on the dots, so they look more like a vintage clay dot now instead of just a white phenolic standard issue dot. So we're going to flip the cotton ball over, a little more naphtha. I'm going to grab it, make a second pass. Most of that came off on the first pass was what was actually on the fret tops. So we're going to do this. I'm not pressing hard. I'm just kind of weight of my hand. So yeah, so you can see there's the first pass. That's the second pass right there. So big difference. The first pass, you can see all the crud it got off the top of the frets. Second pass, a little bit more. So what we'll do now is we'll hit it one more pass and see what happens. Alright, that looks good. So, alright, so we are done with that. So the next thing, I'm just going to let this thing set up, let the naphtha dry. The next thing we'll do is we're going to go ahead, check the frets. I already know I checked this if y'all watched my other video when I did the grain fill on the body. I had already done a couple of things, no work, but just a couple of preliminary kind of spot checks when I got the parts in, and there were 5 high frets on this fingerboard. So the next thing we'll do is we'll get my workbench set up to where I'll go ahead and since I have 5 frets, they're mainly from like 7 back. So what I may do, since it's 5, my general rule of thumb is if it's 5, I'm just going to level all of them. So it's a new neck, so we'll have to make sure it's straight. Let's see here. Let's see if it's straight. It is straight. So, okay. Yeah, I got a new, it's my dog barking, she hears me talking in here. I got a new notched straight edge. The one I have here is set up for 25.5 Fender, 24 3/4 Gibson. But what happens if somebody brings an acoustic in here or a Paul Reed Smith, which I've had a few PRSs, and I've got one actually over here that I'm about to retop. This one has the bigger cuts on it, so I can do multiple scales with the one straight, and then it's got a flat straight edge for checking frets. And like I say, I already know there's about 5 high. Anyway. So, alright, so it's getting kind of late here. I got a late start. I was in the house troubleshooting some computer issues that my wife was having with her online class. So, tomorrow probably be another late start, so maybe Friday afternoon, Friday evening, I'll actually start the fret level, and I think this weekend I may actually refret my 81, 82 Bernie. That's got if y'all been keeping up with that saga, it's my favorite guitar ever. It's the best guitar I've ever owned. And it's a 81 or 82. We're still having issues dating it. There's no serial numbers stamped or printed anywhere. The electronics seem to indicate that it was a late 81, early 82. So that's why I call it my 81, 82. But the frets, it's the everything on it's original. The frets are so damn worn down, it's almost like playing a fretless bass. I mean, it's really hard to bend. It sounds beautiful if you're just doing chords or, power chords or whatever, but to do any type of lead work at all, it's horrendous. So I really miss playing it, and I miss gigging with it. Not that we're really gigging right now because of coronavirus, but I'm actually thinking I'm going to go ahead and refret that thing this weekend maybe. So anyway, that'll be another video for another time. So basically, I'm going to pause it right here and pick back up, and we'll do a summary of what we did tonight. Alright, so here's a summary of what we did tonight. The neck was from the factory, from all parts, fresh out of the box. I took some naphtha, cleaned the rosewood board. I made 3 passes with the naphtha, clean it, let it dry, clean it, let it dry, clean it, let it dry. Everything was good. I made sure at all times that I kept my nut slot free and clear of any debris. After that, we took our Angelus leather dye. This is dark brown. I'm sorry, I forgot to tell y'all that. It's a dark brown Angelus leather dye. You can do approximately 7,344,414 fingerboards with this stuff. That's how concentrated it is. I bet I may have used maybe 2 drops out of that bottle. I did not use the standard issue cheap nitrile gloves. I used the more expensive, almost double, Venom Steel. They're 2-ply. You got a black outer coating and a white inner coating, and I got absolutely no dye on my fingers at all. I used a cotton ball, and really that's like 2 drops of that stuff, seriously. I put it on. I didn't push. If you push, it's going to pool up, and then you run the risk of it dripping down the sides. I went up the fingerboard, and then I went down the fingerboard. After that, I very carefully did the edges of the fingerboard. And I think there was one spot right there where it kind of got a little bit out. I mean, you would probably never notice it if I didn't point it out. Everything did well. What I did was, well, I'll use a Q-tip so you can see. Instead of going flat, I held it at an angle away from the maple and just kind of ran it back this way. So if I did have a run or a drip or a pool, it would pull back onto the fingerboard and not drip down the back side of the neck. So did that one, both sides. I did the front leading edge of the rosewood that actually goes into the slope of the headstock. Same thing. I just pulled back towards the fingerboard. I didn't kind of rub it this way because all it takes is one oh shit, and you got a nice dark brown. Now at that point you could probably stain your headstock to match the fingerboard, which nothing wrong with that, but not really the look I was going for on this guitar. So after that, I did one pass, and I let it set. Well, I say one pass. I went up and then back down, and then I let it set for about 10 minutes to soak in. Then I came back with some naphtha, made 3 passes on the fingerboard. That was the first pass. Most of that dark brown is what was on top of the frets. That was the second pass, just a little bit of dark brown, and then the third pass didn't hardly have anything, so I'm happy with that. So anyway, so that's it for this episode of On the Bench. I believe this is going to be part 2 of the Stratocaster, the Coral Strat assembly. I'm taking it basically from box to gig. So got a few weeks ahead of us. Like I say, I got the pickups in for it yesterday. I'm using a lace sensor blue in the neck, a lace sensor silver in the middle, and a lace sensor red in the bridge. I don't have anything wired up at this point. I just put my shielding tape on there. The 5-way switch, the 3 pots, and the pickups just came in yesterday. So that will be an episode in and of itself. I believe the next thing I'm going to do, like I said, is level and recrown and polish these frets. And after I get that done, this is a left-handed neck, but since I'm mounting it upside down on a right-handed guitar, the position markers that are on the top, which will be the bottom on this guitar, don't really do us a whole lot of good. So we're going to re-drill up top here. I'm going to put some new position markers on there and do the tuning keys, and then I think that will all be, I think the frets will be one episode, and then the position markers and the tuning keys will be the next episode, or if I can keep it short enough, it'll all be one episode. So anyway, so alright, I appreciate y'all hanging out with me. If you like the video, please like the video. Don't forget to subscribe. Drop some comments down there. That's what it's for. Gripes, bitches, moans, complaints, suggestions for future videos. Whatever y'all got. I'm not doing these videos for me. I'm doing them for y'all. So y'all let me know what y'all think. And we'll sign off from Patriot Guitars in Hammond, Louisiana.